Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tim Binnall.
No commercials, no subscriptions, no network, no rules, and at the end of the day, my friends, no comparison. Welcome back to another edition of the Binnall of America Revival. And we've got an awesome show, I think, in part. Let me start over on that one. And we've got what I think is going to be an awesome show for you tonight. I've been, as Nate will attest, I've been chasing him down now for like the last 2 months.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Once I knew we were bringing Binnall of America back, Nate was on the top of the list here for people I want to talk to. So it was kind of like, all right, Nate, hurry the fuck up, man. Let's get this show on the road, man.
I
want to talk to you about this book.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've already alluded to who it is, but our guest tonight is Nate Brislin. He's the author of a fantastic new book titled Crawlers, a conclusive case book. And it came out this summer. Folks who follow me on social media might have seen some of my posts. I took a really cool picture of the book, like out in the woods, kind of how I imagine these crawlers to be. And that is kind of how he looks on the cover, the crawler. Nate also produced directed a couple of films, Pine State Phantoms and Eyes from the Pines, the Pine Ape Project. But tonight we're going to be talking about Crawlers. I'm so used to saying to Nate, this is a whole new setup. So like Nate can see me, I can see Nate. None of you can see us because we're going to just put this on as a podcast. But if for some reason this video ever comes out, there's the book. And it is fantastic. And I'm excited about this interview in a way because this is classic Binnall of America in a sense because, as I said, I wanted to get Nate on the show. I knew we were going to get him on the show. I had leafed through the book a little bit. I've had it like since it first came out, but I'm like, I have a thing where if I'm going to have the person on the show, I want to read it like as close to the show as possible. So I actually read the book this week. I had kind of gone through read cases here and there over the course of the summer, but it's like I'm not going to really really fucking get in there and write this and put the notes down. And as Nate can see, I sent him the notes today, so he knows that they're pretty they're pretty in depth. Excited about
you
this.
did read the book.
yeah, for sure. So I really enjoyed it quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to getting into it because these are usually my favorite Binnall of America episodes when I know the material as well as I possibly can going into the show, and we can really dig into it. So before we get into the crawlers, let's talk about Nate Brislin. Give us the bio, the background. Who is Nate Brislin? How'd you get mixed up in the world of cryptozoology and Forteana?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Nate Brislin. I've been interested in cryptozoology, paranormal, Fortean phenomena, all of that. Basically, as long as I can remember, I've always been interested in Sasquatch and just anything like that, ghosts. So I trying to think of, it was probably cryptozoology that I mostly am interested in. I'll dive into like my first film actually was Pine State Phantoms, and that was all sort of ghosts and paranormal. Basically everything that's not cryptozoology, actually. And then with my second film, I delved into specifically Bigfoot, the Bigfoot phenomenon in Maine. And so that was a good, way to kind of get some, boots on the ground documentation, treating. It's not to go off on a tangent already, but it's kind of two, what's the best way to describe it? Like two sides of investigating, kind of, because with like something like a UFO or a ghost or anything like that, there's not usually like anything physical to go off of. So it's really is kind of a not much of like a change of pace as much as there's something a bit more, or there's definitely something more tangible with cryptids and
Right.
Bigfoot and things like that, just because they're or they should be looked at as undiscovered species of animals, so they wouldn't, have abilities like cloaking or anything like that. And that's sort of how I look at cryptozoology. And that's why I started my own association, which is the Association of Cryptozoological Fieldwork and Analysis.
Yes,
And
that's the Facebook page. Right?
yep, that's my group on Facebook. As of yet unpublished website, still trying to get off the ground, but tons of researchers from around the world sharing their encounters, their field work, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic site. I turn to it quite often when looking for stuff for Coast to Coast. So yeah,
Thank you.
Recommend it. It's got a lot of stuff going on there.
A lot of variety. Try to keep.
Yeah. So okay, so you always had this interest in cryptozoology, and what led you to write about the crawlers and give us the thumbnail on what the crawlers are? And I'm sure you're going to elucidate this a little more, but it's like I think when people hear crawlers, unfortunately, they think of the wacky Sacramento night crawlers thing, and it's like this is not that at all, folks. This is more like Dover demon-y creatures.
Exactly.
So, but I'll sort of turn it over to you. Tell people, give us the basics on what crawlers are. How did you even hear about this? Like, how did you? Because when you told me, I think you had mentioned this like in the spring, maybe, or even last year, that you were working on a book on crawlers, and I'm like, what is that? Like, I mean, I've been around, man. I've been around for like 20 years. I'm like, what? What is? I'm like, so you mean the night crawler thing in California? You're like, no, dude, this other thing. And then like you told me about it, and then I'm like, that sounds really interesting. Then I got the book, and I'm like, wow, this is way more. This is much bigger than I thought, that I imagined it was. So, bring people up to speed on what are these crawlers? What is the crawler? What is this phenomenon that the whole book is centered around?
Yeah, so I first heard about the sort of phenomena of crawlers through Lon Strickler, actually, of Phantoms and Monsters. And I had seen he was doing a lot of, I don't know if he was calling them crawlers, but like weird humanoid,
Right.
what fits the description, which are these pale humanoid type creatures that are seen in the forest. And so I kind of had that in the back of my mind. And just through forums, I'm on tons of different cryptozoological paranormal forums online. I couldn't even tell you how many I'm part of. I'm part of so many. And I caught wind of this couple who had this must have been like probably 2018, 2019. And I had caught wind of this couple from Kentucky. This is Jackie and Nick Carell, whose description and their eyewitness sketches are actually the cover of the book. And I caught wind of them, and I heard about their encounter on a forum, and I was like, oh, we should talk more. This seems compelling. And it just literally snowballed from there. I had interviewed them on my podcast. They could not have been more helpful and detailed with their just sharing information and helping out with this. And that was when I kind of realized, I was like, this is like, I don't know. I had seen ones where they were more so just kind of like creepypasta, like made up, like obviously made up. And this was just like, this was something else entirely. This was 3 different people had seen this, and it kind of mirrors back to what is considered the first crawler sighting, or at least to me, what I consider to be the first crawler sighting, which is the Dover Demon in Massachusetts, which Lauren Coleman named, researched extensively.
Yeah, you literally put it on the map pretty much.
Exactly, yeah. And the whole sort of mythos of the Dover Demon is that it was only sighted, 2 or 3 times within the one night that it was seen. and never again. No one has ever seen anything else like this since then, and that's it. It's just a contained mystery, and it's its own thing. And when Jackie and Nick had sent me the sketches of what they had seen in Kentucky that night, one of them looked so much like the Dover Demon sketches by the eyewitnesses that I was like, there's no way that there isn't something else going on here.
Right.
There has to be, some sort of connection. It's just I'm having a hard time trying to like
No, I get what you're saying.
weave it together, but really that was sort of like the start of it.
That was the light bulb moment for you.
Exactly.
You were
Yeah.
like, okay, this is because I sort of intimated that a little bit. Yeah, like when I was setting you up there, where it's like, everybody who's everybody knows about the Dover Demon story.
Yeah.
That's like pretty much iconic if you're into cryptozoology at all. So yeah, to me, like when you had described sort of the crawler thing, and I was like, well, like the Dover Demon, you're like, yeah, like the Dover Demon. And it's like, well, I thought that was just a one-time thing. And then, I can imagine you kind of had this experience as you were putting the book together. I did when I picked up the book. It was like, oh wow, this is way more, than one isolated incident. It seems. I mean, it's really hard to wrap your arms, or no pun intended, because these things have crazy long arms, but it's really hard to wrap your arms around. Now, tell people, they can imagine the Dover Demon, but it's sort of based on what the various witnesses have said. Give us sort of a, like if you were just to describe this thing as far as generally how it goes across the spectrum, but there are some similarities that one might place into the crawler archetype.
Yeah, absolutely. There's slight variations, which there's a chart in the book of kind of like a height chart as well, and those are just kind of like the three sizes basically, but they all sort of act the same. And my hypothesis is that they would be growth stages in one's life cycle, in a crawler's life cycle. But so basically a crawler is a humanoid cryptid, hairless, typically hairless. Sometimes they're reported with sparse light hair, but generally hairless. More often than not, described as having glistening or shiny skin, not wet, but kind of just like I don't know, bizarre reflective skin. They have large rounded heads, almost always big round eyes, almost perfectly circular eyes that reflect light. I think typically green or yellow are the most common ones that are reported, and their behaviors they're not aggressive or hostile, but they will, and I was surprised looking back on all of this that a lot of the eyewitnesses described very similar stalking behavior through the woods. Maybe not, visually, like there are ones where they're like, this thing was following us, either keeping pace with our car, and actually there are a couple where it follows vehicles. But almost always these eyewitnesses are reported as being stalked by these things. So it's just very interesting how much crosses over, and how many consistencies there are in between each case with these things, because I swear if there weren't, there's always sort of things that differentiate each case, obviously,
right?
But when you look at them broadly, you're like, oh, this could be like very easily a real population distribution or a real species, because there's so many consistencies. It would be sort of odd if something weren't going on, if that makes sense. Right.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. It's people in different parts of the country are reporting the same thing, and when you pull the camera back like you've done with Crawlers, the book, you can kind of see that. One of the things you didn't mention that I thought was interesting, a couple of sort of characteristics, I would say, is one of the things. Yeah, it seemed the creature, for lack of a better term, based on the witness reports, the totality of them, it seemed like I would almost say it was more. I don't know if I would call it aggressive or what, or brazen. That's the best word. Brazen. Like the witness after witness after witness reported, like, I looked, I saw it, it saw me, and then it came at me, and it was like, then I took off running. And it's like, well, it's kind of like it's a macabre joke, but it's like, well, we don't hear from any of the people that like it caught.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who knows what would have happened to them?
Yeah.
But it was a very interesting, because I don't recall very many cryptids, that their first instinct, and animals for sure. I mean, you don't really hear too many stories about being charged by an animal out. Generally they're kind of fearful of people. This thing seems like it has no compunction or concern about the people that are seeing it.
Maybe saying that they're not aggressive maybe wasn't the right term, but they're definitely I would say, that was brazen is a really good word for it. But
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's we'll get into more of this later, but sort of like the hypothesis that we come up with is that sort of behavior makes sense if you apply it to sort of like a primate type of animal. So it kind of, I'm not sure, because aggressiveness kind of is what's the word? Different perspective.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, it could be like a bluff charge, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What you're saying,
So maybe they're just acting aggressive, so they don't have to actually become aggressive, which a lot of gorillas do, a lot of primates do. But that's not to say that these things aren't terrifying. And a lot of these eyewitnesses actually have long-term, internal, not sort of scarring, but like trauma almost from seeing these things. Yeah. A lot of and it's detailed in the book. A lot of these sightings they talk in detail about the effect that it had on them seeing this thing. And just the way some of them are, they seem too visceral to me, at least. And that someone just made that up for like to prank someone who's writing a book.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that raises one of the first questions I had as I was reading the book, because I don't think you say this anywhere in the book, but maybe I missed it at the very beginning or something. But where did you get all these cases from?
Yeah, and that's not something I really went into. You're right, not much or at all in the book, but I
mean, I kind of picked up you got them through some kind of internet.
It really was a lot of different sort of resources. A lot of them people reported to me because I would literally just blast on different forums like, looking for encounters, right. Or looking for more information on maybe this one encounter that someone posted here. Would love to know if anyone had any more info. And I would actually, with my crypto association, we have a sightings form, and a lot of submissions we actually received through that people filled out and sent that. People contacted me personally, being like, "Hey, I heard you were writing, this book. We saw some of the sketches you posted. We saw something that was exactly like that, if not almost exactly like that." And I just got flooded with not only like detailed descriptions of what some people were seeing, but people were including their eyewitness sketches, and it was just a lot of weird, like I said, consistencies sort of synced up with. It's different, like describing something, like when you're describing something that you saw and then actually drawing it, because that's definitely more, especially if someone didn't take a photo. An eyewitness sketch is the closest that we're going to get in that instance to actually seeing what they saw, if they're not lying about what they saw. But go ahead. Oh no, I was just going to say, a lot of different sources from my group, and there's not a lot of like references, mostly because the book is sort of acting as a, this is the evidence that we have, and what do we make of it? So it's sort of just kind of trying to set a baseline for researching crawlers and analyzing the evidence and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's a conclusive case book. It's a book of cases,
exactly,
quite literally. And like you said, I mean, and I appreciate that you have this perspective because we talked about this like before we went on the air. It's like you have to kind of take every story with a grain of salt, because you just don't know. You just don't know who's telling the truth and who isn't really, and so there's no, it's not like true crime or something where they're going to say something that oh, okay, I know they're telling the truth because they said that it has a sixth toe or whatever, like there's some secret information. It's like you kind of have to just take them at their word on it, which is, I mean, that's kind of the nature of this, field nowadays as it is. So
just Fortean and cryptozoology in general.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if we don't have people reporting their stories and stuff, we don't have a lot to go off of.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And two of there was a couple other physical characteristics that just sort of keep trying to paint this picture for you. So we got like a bulbous head with the circular eyes on the front.
Yes, forward-facing eyes. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like a person. A super, I'm sure it kind of depends, but like emaciated body.
Yes.
With like super long arms, and super long hands, and just super long legs, like spindly and just
thin and like lanky features all around.
And what I found interesting was in some of the cases they would say like that the person like heard like a thud, or they heard like this commotion in the forest. And it's like, how is that possible? This thing is like a tiny little thing. So that kind of was like just a weird detail that I have trouble. That makes me kind of wonder, like, is there some kind of supernatural aspect to this? The other part was I think this is important to note to people who are trying to wrap their minds around this cryptid, is like that it also has some kind of means to go from bipedal to on fours, like in a blink of an eye, and then take off and then be super fast. So it's I don't know of any. I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know of any like Bigfoot reports where Bigfoot gets down on all fours and like runs away. So this is kind of like a very. I mean, there probably are a few, but
not numerous. It's not a common thing people report for Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's certainly not like a characteristic you would apply to Bigfoot. With this thing, I would say you would apply.
That's like every other report.
Yeah, it's like people will see it. It's standing there. They're like, "What is that thing?" And then at some point, it just drops down to all fours and scurries away, and it's like in an incredibly fast way. So, and in a weird, the general thing was like it seemed to like be just weird, like weird way of moving, kind of like you almost can't wrap your mind around it. Because I mean, how often do you see anything on 2 feet drop down to 4 limbs and then like be very adept at moving in that way?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
like that. Like that's the way it's meant to be moving.
Right.
It's not weird for it or anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what to make of that. Especially where people are saying it moves sort of unnaturally. I can't think of. That's one of the questions that I don't quite have an answer for. Is why do these things look so, I don't know, unnatural when they're moving, just moving around, when they're not, at full speed or anything like that, because according to eyewitnesses, these things have no problem, moving through their own environment, on all fours. They're very much aware of how well they can maneuver in their environment. So I'm not sure how to explain when people report just that when they're moving upright, just how lost my train of thought. Sorry about that.
Unwieldy? No, it's all right.
Yeah, just unnatural. I'm not sure how to explain that aspect of it because
Yeah.
clearly if it's a real species, obviously, it's able to, very easily shift from one stance to
Right.
another.
Right.
So maybe the upright stance isn't its natural gait. Maybe that's not the way
Right. Yeah. It's
it
like natural.
moves, or
Yeah.
yeah.
It's default position, if you will.
Yeah. So maybe its default position is on all fours, and maybe when they're upright, maybe it's like a bear or something, and they're just
Yeah, it could be.
inspecting, but they're, bears can only really shuffle, which is another reason why bears may not be a good excuse for Sasquatch, because
Right.
when they're upright, they sort of shuffle left and right. They don't really move
Yeah, they don't
bipedally like a person does.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, like somebody on roller skates or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the cases in the book. Now, as I said to you before we started the show, I didn't want to just go, okay, let's do this case, that case, that case. So I just kind of picked the three that most stood out to me. And Michael Walker was the first one. And I guess what really, I mean, you don't have to tell his story. I wouldn't ask you to like tell these people's stories. If you want to give like a thumbnail on what he experienced, what I thought was interesting about this case was he probably has the closest look at one of these things, because he goes into his grandfather's shed and it's like shuffling around in there, and he kind of walks in on it, and it's like there's a drawing in the book that's the best drawing. Like it's the
most detailed one.
Drawing.
Definitely.
Yeah, like he got the best look at it. So talk a little bit about this case.
Yeah, so Michael, who's now one of my very good friends, after I discovered his story, he was very kind enough to he just laid it all out there. He told me straight up every single thing that happened, the dates that it happened, or maybe not the dates, but the general timeline of when it happened. And he had three different encounters over the course of the summer of 2014, I believe. I think it was July to August. And yeah, I'm not even sure how to,
well, I mean, you don't even have to tell
the entirety of all of it. Yeah.
Talk about how he walked in on the thing, though. That's probably
I'm trying to, because it's I couldn't imagine seeing this thing in real life.
Yeah.
Because the picture that he draws of it is so, I don't even know. It is, yeah. It's so strange. He describes it, and this is actually goes to another part of the like primate hypothesis, where he described the teeth as being sort of exposed, where there weren't any like lips or anything. And in my head, which I didn't go over this in the book, but that seems like an animal sort of pulling its teeth back or its lips back, and maybe doing sort of like an intimidation or fear thing, which a lot of chimps and primates do.
Right.
But
now, did he? I assume you've talked to him about this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how close was he to this thing?
I honestly don't think he ever talked about, like the proximity of it, but he's a very, very talented artist. I've seen his art. He actually did a full-size Flatwoods Monster piece for me, and that's super incredible. But he's an incredible artist. It's not like a sketch like that someone drew in like 10 seconds or something. He really like
put a lot of thought into this.
And I couldn't imagine.
Well, what was his experience like? Was he? I assume he was just sort of super terrified to even be close enough. I mean, he was close enough to get a good look at it. Like a lot of these people didn't see it that well. Like he really saw it.
Yeah, and that also begs the question: what was the thing doing in the shed?
Right.
Was it or the barn shed? I believe it was a shed.
I think it was, yeah. I think it was like looking. There was like, from my recollection, I'm probably ahead of you because I read the book like last couple of days. So but his grandfather had kept a bunch of rotting, disused meat in his fridge from hunting and stuff, and in the shed. And Michael was walking by or something, and he heard a commotion in the shed, and then he went in, and then there was this thing. A crawler, essentially. Although this one looked like more, and he might have used a little more artistic license, but this one looked a little more muscular than I remember.
It's got more like human proportions, it looks like, where it's not so much like, you know, like spider monkey proportions as they typically are, kind of. But yeah, he said it didn't have like a nose or lips. The eyes were like kind of I think kind of squinting, but like looking at him, like it very much, you know, saw him. And I think he was 13 at the time. He was. Oh boy, okay. He was younger, I believe. And yeah, and I believe before that was either his first encounter, or I think that was his first encounter, because that was also when we talked about earlier the thud. And which is also another common thing people report, is it either coming out of a tree or just this sound, whether it's laying or what,
manifesting or something, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, that's one of the weirder cases, because it's like, wow, this guy, the picture's like, you know, it's unsettling.
It's kind of jarring too, the way because it's a full page in the book, so you kind of just flip to it and it's there.
Yeah, and you're like, whoa, what is? Yeah. Yeah, the drawings are really interesting in the book, because you get a real kind of perspective on this. Now I should circle back, because this is kind of addressed like in the beginning of the book, and I'm sure I don't know if you'll ever be able to sort of put down any confusion that might arise from this, but and it might have been the person who wrote the introduction, but I'm sure you kind of are in agreement here. Because this isn't, when people hear the crawler, they might first think like, okay, is it a skinwalker or a Wendigo? And you're making the argument that this is like a completely different thing from those two phenomena.
Yeah. So there's, at least that's what I put forth in the book, at least. Whereas the Wendigo and Skinwalker, they're more so supernatural entities, where a Wendigo, you become one when you are a cannibal, and you become this creature that's always, it's never satiated. And with a Skinwalker, it's a indigenous type of witch, I believe, that can become, you know, a creature or different animals by wearing pelts. And absolutely none of that is what people report with their crawler sightings. These are, you know, completely their own things. There's one or two sort of what I guess would consider supernatural crawler sightings in the book. There's a small handful where they report, you know, lights being associated, and things like that. But typically, much like with the Dover Demon, there's no UFOs reported. There's no magic or, you know, cloaking, as some Bigfoot people say. Right. There's nothing like that reported. There's generally, it's very grounded in animalistic behaviors, which is why that leads me to believe that it's most likely some species of mammal, if they do exist.
Right. Mm-hmm. And what about the rake? I meant to look this up. I meant to look up rake more, but when somebody in one of the stories kind of compares it to a rake, I was like, oh, it does sound kind of like a rake. But then, you know, I meant to look it up today to see how if my impression of a rake was actually as accurate as what the general description of a rake is. I figure you could kind of pick me up on this one. So how close would you say the crawler is to the rake, as far as, you know, possibly maybe there's a connection there?
Yeah, I would say they're similar only superficially, as the rake really sort of originated from internet creepypasta and
Okay, all
online
right.
fictional horror stories.
Hmm.
A lot of a lot of just actual fiction from earlier days in the internet. And once again, crawlers are very much actually I think rakes are even more human like than a crawler is, which is, not featureless, but almost reduced features, I guess, aside from, the big eyeballs and things like that. They don't typically report mouths aside from when they're, baring their teeth and stuff, but you don't usually
Yeah.
ever see like a closed mouth or anything like that. But with the rake, it's very much more so human proportions in these stories, and very much more so sort of like boogeyman type, where they're
Yeah.
inside the house. But even then, there's sort of crossover with that, because there's a small handful of crawler sightings that are sort of inside the house, but they are not dubious, but they're not as detailed or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, which you're familiar with. I think one of the earlier ones was one where he's peeking over the foot of the bed at the
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
person. um,
Yeah, and like there was a woman in the book.
mm,
There was a woman in the book who she like said she woke up, went to the window or the doorway, and it was there, and then she like freaked out, and then went back to bed, and it was like I kind of feel like maybe that was just a dream.
yeah.
Like I feel like maybe that wasn't an actual encounter.
Mhm.
With all due respect to her and her
Oh, absolutely.
experience, but it was just kind of like I'm not seeing anything here that really Um, yeah, I just while you were saying that, I just googled the rake, and it's kind of frustrating because yeah, I don't know why the hell I thought the rake was a genuine cryptid, but it's apparently has was created on creepypasta like Slender Man. It's a very
Yep.
annoying part of modern day crypto. I wouldn't even
Yep.
it's not cryptozoology, but it's
Yeah.
like it's this
Just online
blurring
horror.
of online horror and sort of this blurring of like cryptozoology is on the fringes of crypto. You get the monster sort of aspect.
Hmm.
And there was some discussion a few years ago on Twitter about you know trying to deviate the monsters from the cryptids, and it's
Right.
like it's getting harder to differentiate the two because the public doesn't do so.
Hmm.
So next thing you know, you got like Slender Man lumped in with cryptids, and it's like, but that was the thing that got
I've seen it
created on
before.
the internet. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, the rake is very much more so along the lines of like the Slender Man, or even like I said, like Boogeyman type stuff,
right.
which I guess Slender Man really is just sort of a modern take on, Boogeyman lore and things like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah. I mean,
definitely distinct from crawlers.
absolutely okay. Yeah, yeah. And the fucking rake is made up from the internet, so it's a
Exactly.
weird. Like I said, I could have sworn I was like Mandela effect or what, but I could have
Hmm.
sworn the rake was something that had existed like for a while, and
Mm.
now I'm disappointed to find out that it was creepypasta. And this is a conversation for another day. But yeah, I mean, there's an argument. I think Nick Redfern wrote a book with Slender Man, and
Mm.
there's an argument to be made that maybe these things have kind of been around and they kind of manifest into these stories, or people create them via tulpa sort of
Mm. Hmm.
um, mass consciousness, or like as more people know about the Slender Man, now people are going to see Slender Man. But
Right.
that's
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, that's a whole nother, that's way beyond cryptozoology and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Now, we talked about the experience that was, I think, probably a dream. We'll pivot now to what I think is the most credible case in the book. So if you're in contact with this person, please let her know. Sarah Nielsen,
Yes.
her story, I think, is the most credible in the book. Do you want to kind of give us just a thumbnail of why? I
Yeah.
mean, you seem pretty confident. That way, I don't have to tell the story. You can
Oh
kind of
yeah,
give us
absolutely. Yeah. No,
the
this is
thumbnail
so
on this tale.
this is absolutely my favorite story, my favorite
Mhm.
crawler encounter. This took place I believe 2015 in Utah, in the name escapes me of the I believe it was a um, national forest. I don't know if it's a national park or what, but they were hunting, so I'm not sure if what the rules are with that.
Yeah,
But so Sarah Nielsen and her grandfather were hunting, and they had shot a deer. They hadn't killed it, and it sort of, they were tracking it, because they didn't want to, just leave it. That's
Right,
as
right.
hunters, you don't just leave an animal if you don't, if you wound
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Right.
And they, it's the story is compelling to me because it's such a long lead up to a very, very brief
Right.
encounter.
Yeah. But
But
I think the grandfather is the key to the
absolutely, yes, yeah.
credibility of the story.
So the grandfather is I believe, said just a biologist, a wildlife biologist,
Right. Right.
and
With some
they
serious credentials, seemed like he had been with the government or the state wildlife.
was it state wildlife? I'm trying to
Yeah, I'll read this.
remember.
I'll read it from the book. Just
My
I put
bad.
Nate on the
Sorry.
spot. I apologize. She says, my grandfather is a recently retired biologist and former
Yeah.
conservation officer in the state, as well as a regional specialist, and was over wildlife and habitat management for many years. So he's done everything from habitat management programs to quite literally wrangling moose, to be translated, and
That's
darting black bears. He has seen mountain lions, bears, birds of all kinds, small mammals, ruminants, which I don't even know what that is.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, plants and natural phenomena for the majority of his life. So it was like, assuming she's telling the truth and this grandfather is a real person and shit, it's like that's the guy you want to see the creature.
Oh yeah, and so the so I'll just go over the story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they hear what I believe they said they heard what sounded like a distorted person screaming.
Yeah, like an eerie scream. Yeah.
Yeah, but not like an injured deer or anything. This was very distinct and different from, the normal sounds that they would expect to hear. And with the grandfather, he definitely would know what the sound was. And as they're going, after, they spent however long searching for this deer in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods, with no light, or with just I think they just had the headlamps, and they come upon this thing, I believe, 10 or 15 feet in front of them, and sure enough, it's this pale humanoid thing in the middle of the woods, this emaciated thing. And I like the way they describe it as the arm around a birch tree in front of it. And I think they said it was as pale, if not paler, than the tree that it had its arm wrapped around.
Yeah.
And or an aspen, I believe, not a birch, but and
right.
they just described the features as being sunken, and it just this haunting thing that they run into in the woods. And they're both just baffled at what they're seeing. She had an extreme reaction where she broke down crying, and the grandfather is trying to, comfort, but she reported him being just as confused as she was.
Right.
He was going through his head. He could not figure out anything similar to what was seen that he knew. And like you said, he's got,
this
all
guy's seen it all.
This guy's literally seen it all, and
right.
This is the thing that throws him through a loop. And it's not like they saw this thing. It was literally, they caught it for a glimpse. they caught a glimpse of it. It's not like it was this long, detailed thing where it, like, charged
Yeah, it
them.
wasn't like a stare down or anything.
Yeah, it didn't stalk them or anything like that. Well, we don't know if it was stalking them before, but it didn't have any of these like detailed things that people sort of report when seeing it. It was just this very, brief. They saw it, you know, and they just had this reaction like this can't be
Yeah.
a real thing. It almost feels like the way they described it, their brains almost refused that they saw this
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how
like
better
they had
to
like a breakdown or something. Yeah, no, for
exactly,
sure. It's
because
definitely you get that feeling from the book.
yeah. And then I had a follow-up dialogue with her after, and she said he won't talk about it anymore, or at
Wow.
least not, you know, as often or anything. It's just I don't know. It the sighting is so detailed, and there's such a buildup to what really doesn't amount to any kind of like payoff that I guess
Right.
someone who if this were a hoax, you would think the person writing it would put a little bit more flair, I guess, to the
Yeah.
actual creature, but this just seems like a real sort of animal encounter, albeit
Yeah.
sort of, they obviously don't know what they're looking at, but there's nothing about how the animal or how the crawler acts, or anything that seems like it wouldn't be like a naturally occurring thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, just seeing this haunting, horrifying sort of just human in the middle of the woods is
Yeah.
really jarring. And I can
Right.
understand, and you get that sense from the how it's written, and it I don't know, to me maybe they wrote a really good story, but I don't know, it's because a lot of the ones where I've seen where it's like, oh, okay, this person's just practicing their horror writing skills. Um, this just didn't seem like that to me, with how
Yeah.
the intricacies of knowing hunting, and like I know people in my family hunt, and this is just like this seems legitimate. Like
Right.
there's
Right. Well,
nothing that I can find where there's any like there's no conflicting details in the story, or
yeah. Yeah.
anything like that.
Well, what I'm left to wonder in this sense is now you said you've gotten to know Michael Walker. Now Sarah
Yeah,
Nielsen, that's a pseudonym.
yeah.
But you said you followed up with her afterwards. Did you get any sort of, because I think my first inclination in a sense would be like, okay, Sarah, this is an amazing story. Can you provide me any proof that of your grandfather's bona fides? At least that way I could, I mean, unless she was like completely didn't want to tell you her name whatsoever. I mean, could you have at least, did you do any sort of background to be like, okay, well, the thing about her grandfather being a high powered or important person in forestry for whatever
Yeah.
in Utah, that checks out. So she's at least telling the truth about that. So I can,
hmm
did you get any verification on that at all?
She also, the whole reason she wanted to use like an alias is because these are not the first
Right,
encounters,
right,
but the first ones that are being publicized in
right,
like
right.
a book or anything like that. And obviously I did all the cursory, Q&A, investigative questions
Yeah,
and things
yeah,
like that to, you know, try and weed out anything.
yeah,
But she was very,
yeah. No, I mean, I don't
she
fault
seemed
her
she no, yeah, she
for
seemed
any.
apprehensive to talk further about her encounter when I
Yeah.
was asking for more details about it as well.
Okay. Right, right.
And whether, I don't know, you could take that as she didn't want to talk about it, or maybe she didn't make up enough of a story to have a follow-up.
Yeah, well,
if it is a fake story.
Yeah, if we're going to be skeptical here, like, yeah, she
Mhm.
could have been like, oh shit, this guy wants to talk to me about that
Right.
story I wrote. He thinks it's real because I lied, because I said it was
Mhm.
real. So
Yeah.
I better, and then she might have been really reticent when you got on the phone with her. I guess
Mhm.
kind of what inspired that question in a way was, we don't have to get into the story, but there's another
Mhm.
story in the book where a guy who had some military background or army background or
Mhm.
whatever, he was the witness, and he provided you with like copies of his dog tags and his
Yep.
military ID with his stuff, blanked out or whatever. So that way
Mhm.
we, at least in that story, it's like, okay, this guy was definitely in the army or whatever.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's why I was kind of wondering. And again, like if you know, I could understand if she was just like, I don't want to tell you my grandfather's name or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
that's the kind of thing you'd like to make, nail down in a sense, at least.
Yeah. Mhm.
Only to me, because that's like the best story, the most quality. That's the kind of thing where it's like, look, I don't want to be an asshole. Can I just talk to your grandfather?
Mhm. Oh,
Like,
exactly. I tried.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, but but that would be like your story's compelling, Sarah, but like this is the
Mhm.
guy, let's talk to Grandpa Nielsen.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
Now the only other story I pinned out in the book was, and you kind of answered it a little bit already, was Jackie and Nick Carell. We're going to take
Yep.
a different take on this. So
Yeah.
they went up a mountain, they saw the thing. They provided some fantastic pictures, and like Nate said, it's on the cover of the book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I love that. As soon as I saw the book cover, I'm like, that is amazing. Did you do the
It
drawing?
I did not know that's eyewitness, one of her
wow.
refined eyewitness drawings.
Oh wow.
Mhm.
Well, what's interesting about the case, well, first of all, and you'd know better than I would. We're not
Mhm.
going to get into like any more specific cases because I feel like I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, totally.
Because I'm like, remember, like I'm like, I have him dog eared like right next to me, so it's
Mhm.
like, well, let's get to my second point in a moment. The
Yep.
first thing that happened in this story, and I'll just say it, and then you can kind of tell me what you
Mhm.
think this fucking means, because to me, it was like mind blowing. And maybe this has
Mhm.
come up if you're friendly with Jackie and Nick still
Yep.
to this day. If you talk to them, I would hope that this has come up in conversation at some point. They're going up the mountain. Eventually, they see the crawler, but on the way up the mountain, it's wicked late. I see you smiling. You know what I'm going
Mhm.
to talk about. It's wicked late. They see this young woman come down the mountain. It's like a moderate hiking trail,
Mhm.
folks. And she's wearing flip flops, and she's all by herself without any water, and presumably like without a flashlight or anything. And it was like either dusk or getting late, getting dark, and she's very like sketchy in a not an underhanded way, but in a way where it was like she seemed Men in
Concerning
Black
almost.
like. That was kind of the impression I got. Like she was like
Mhm.
someone trying to pretend to be human.
Yeah.
And the whole thing
Like a
was
pod
like,
person.
yeah, and the whole thing was like, I'm really glad they included that part in the story or in the report, because to me that was like, okay, this has to have something to do with it somehow. I mean, I'll be honest, Nate. I think that you think it's a creature. I think it might be more supernatural, but
Oh yeah.
I don't know. But what do you make of the mystery woman coming down the mountain in the flip flops?
Mhm.
And what do Jackie and Nick think about this?
So, in my opinion, so they were going up. This was before they saw the crawler,
Yeah.
and she came down, and like you said, she was just very out of it. And they talked about this when I interviewed them on my podcast,
Okay.
and
Dig that
they
out.
said
Yeah.
she sort of I think because there was three of them, and they all had their headlamps on her, but she was just unfazed by it. Like three people, being like, "Oh, are you okay?" Like,
Yeah.
and then the way they said it is that she flatly said, "Oh, I'm fine," in like a weird robotic
Yeah.
sort of way, and then I think she just left.
Right.
And I almost want to say I don't think that she is like a crawler turned into a person or any weird
Yeah.
thing like that, but I think it's entirely possible that maybe she had encountered the crawler before them,
Oh,
and
I didn't even think of that.
maybe it's entirely possible maybe she was lost on the trail, or maybe had gone further than she would have thought.
Right.
And but to me that just sounds like maybe she had maybe a more traumatic
Wow.
encounter with the crawler,
I didn't
which
even
would
think of
also
that.
line up with the Dover Demon encounters, where multiple different groups of people had seen the same, what we can consider to be the same individual
Creature.
creature. And so that would just be possibly another case of that, because it's implied that the Dover Demon it was one single creature seen by these three different people. To me, it just sounds like that she had possibly seen the crawler before they had, and because
Interesting.
maybe because they didn't see her after, they weren't able to be like, oh, did you see this, weird thing that
Right.
happened? Because
Yeah.
she just
She
kind of
might have been so freaked
she
out.
disappears
She wasn't
after
gonna
that.
go. Yeah. She was.
Hmm.
Yeah. I thought. Yeah. Because I maybe that thought did cross my mind in the book, because I was kind of wondering. Yeah, if she was gonna be like, there's something up there or something like
Hmm.
that. Yeah. Like she. But I mean, if she saw something and she was all freaked out, I could imagine. I don't know if my first inclination would be like, hey, there's a like there's a like I mean, I think honestly, if I saw one, my closest because of the bulbous head and the spindly body, I would almost be like, there's like an alien up there or
Yeah.
something. I
Hmm.
don't know what it is. It's I people get the book, folks. First of all, I implore you to buy the book so you can get an understanding of kind of like I feel like we haven't almost I haven't really pressed this part enough, that these things are like super fucking pale,
Hmm.
like incredibly pale. I think that's a huge part of the archetype of the
Hmm.
crawler. It's like again, it's got the bulbous head. It's like wicked emaciated. It's got long spindly arms, long legs, spindly little hands,
And it's even
long
more
hands.
distinct than
Yeah,
gray aliens, because
right,
gray aliens have the dime or the almond shaped eyes,
right,
whereas all of the crawlers have very, very round forward facing eyes, not slanted in any way.
right. Like
Typically,
welder
even with the
glasses.
Dover Demon, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And they're like super, super pale.
Hmm.
Like that's I don't know too many creatures that are even that pale to begin with.
Well,
Other, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you'd know, like an owl, like, right? Like I've heard
yeah, or
people say
any.
that.
So in the book, I was able to talk with a biologist who did not want to be named, but they looked through the encounters. We talked about it a lot, and she and I sort of came up with a possibly like hypothetical, realistic sort of, how would this animal, if it were a real, animal, not supernatural thing, something that evolved on Earth, how would this thing have evolved and adapted to its environment? And
Right, right,
we saw with all of these different sightings, they were more or less, especially with the ones in like Kentucky and Michigan, they were by cave systems.
right.
So she had actually put forth the idea that, oh, these crawlers have all of the attributes for a cave dwelling subterranean animal species, with the
Right.
um, pale skin,
Yes.
translucent sort of skin, the
The big
dark
eyes.
eye, big
Yeah,
eyes,
yeah. Like even though
and
I said that, I think it's yes. I've now
yeah.
been getting on the fence here, but yeah. Even though I said there's part of me that I feel like it's supernatural, but yes, the if it is a creature of some
Hmm.
kind, it has to be some kind of cave. It feels like it has to be some kind like exists in the darkness. It looks like it's adapted to
Hmm.
darkness. in a profound way.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And where people report them just sort of popping just in and out of encounters, like it'll be there 1 second and then just take off and disappear. But it seems like that it had just, appeared out of nowhere. Could also lead to the idea that um, they live in caves and they just know
Right.
where all the little, holes and crevices lead to.
Right.
If one needs to make like a quick escape or anything like that.
Yeah, because if
Oh.
if we were to take it extends the idea that
Mhm.
this is a cave dwelling creature, then yeah, it would stand to reason like that it's probably out more often than it gets seen.
Mhm.
So it would have a better idea of how to get around the area. So it's experience theoretically.
Yeah.
All right, I got to get the fuck out of here because I just
Yeah.
ran into a guy.
Well, and
you
even
know,
then, so it would be a cave dwelling species anyways, but then when people are reporting them, it's 8 or 9 out of 10 times at night. So
right.
even then, they're even more elusive than they normally would be because they're not only living in caves, maybe during the day, but they're coming out at night, so they're even more elusive than I guess like a Bigfoot or something would be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this was like this creature is kind of like nightmare fuel, folks, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A lot of these that was one of the under the trends and oddities sort of heading of my notes here. The first thing I had, these are all you said something like 90% nocturnal, right? I don't even remember any in the book that might. I mean, maybe when Michael Walker went up to the shed there, maybe that was in the daytime, but I would say like I don't
Yeah.
recall any in the book that were. I mean, these primarily, if there's an archetype for the crawler, there's sort of an archetype in a way for the sighting, and that is like people out at night near a forested area,
Mhm.
or at home in a remote location, like a remote home
Yeah.
on a farm or whatever with forest around it. These
Yeah.
seem to be the places where these things are seen
Mhm.
most often, based on the book, and at night.
Mhm.
That would be the main overarching theme in a way. I
Yeah.
think, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And even if we want to take it a step further, population distribution sort of seems to be uh, Midwest, I would say, if
Yeah,
not, more so like Eastern, at least Eastern half
yeah, I would
of
say that. Yeah,
of North America. But and then even then, there's sightings from like British Columbia and Vancouver. I think there was a couple
yeah.
from 2 or 3 from Canada, but
If I would make a
yeah.
suggestion, if you reissue
Mhm.
the book, or if you do a website or something for the
Mhm.
book, a map, a
That's a
map
great
with
idea.
yeah, because what would be interesting is to see where if there's any correlation with the mountains of America.
Mhm.
Because theoretically that would then open it up to cave systems and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
exactly.
crevasses or whatever, and
Mhm.
places to hide and things. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would, because in most of the places, yeah, they seem to be relatively near mountains and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, what I also thought was really interesting in the book, um, is there's more than a few instances where the witness uh, sees the creature on more than one occasion, sometimes over the course of like years.
Mm.
Sometimes the creature like follows them back to their house, or they show up, they show up like later, like they
Right.
see the thing, they're freaked out, they go home. Later in the night, they hear the screech, they look out the window, and the thing's in the
And it's
backyard. It's
there, yep.
like, what is that all about? That's
Uh-huh.
wild. But very, very, very different from any other cryptid. Like if you see Bigfoot once in your life, you're really fucking lucky.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you see it more than once, you're probably someone who's like actually out in the woods all the time, or someone
Mhm.
looking for it. Like the random person driving down the street, through the back roads in the Appalachians,
Mhm.
who might pass a Bigfoot. Like that's it. That's your shot. That's the
Oh, yeah.
one time you're gonna see Bigfoot. So it's
Mhm.
like that was very interesting in the book. There were, like I said, more than a handful of people who see this thing on more than one occasion. I guess, what do you make of that, based on having sort of studied these cases?
Well, if we are sort of entertaining the idea that this is a at least intelligent, it's definitely shown to have its own, thoughts and reacting to different, things that happen. So it's definitely like a thinking,
almost
intelligent,
sentient.
Yeah, if not reacting on solely instinct, thinking, yeah. And I would imagine that maybe they're curious, or maybe, and people say this about Bigfoot too, where some people claim they're Bigfoot living on their property or something that. Where, take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, but
just take a picture. That's all I ask.
Yeah,
take a picture. If the Bigfoot lives on your property, just take a picture.
Yeah,
you don't, like, just the world. I don't care how fucking close you are to the Bigfoot. There's a whole millions of people who have devoted their lives to wondering about this. Just take the picture, please. I'm sorry, but it just drives me up.
There's no instance where if I owned a plot of land and there were Bigfoot on my property regularly, that I could say they were appearing regularly. There's no way I wouldn't be putting, a camera on my porch every night or something.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe that's why we don't have Bigfoot living on our property, because we would turn on it. We would betray the Bigfoot within like 6 weeks. I would befriend the Bigfoot, and then I would fucking betray the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And I'll say it right now here on Binnall of America. I don't care. I would take it. So I'd be like, I love you, Bigfoot. I want you to stay here on my property. No one will ever know you're here. It's going to be the best time ever. Here's some berries, some hot dogs, whatever the fuck you want to eat. And then 6 weeks later, I'd be like, taking all kinds of pictures, video, everything.
There's no solidarity with Bigfoot.
He's tortured us for generations.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's the hide and seek champion.
Yeah, exactly.
As they say.
But it is interesting, yeah, because that part reminded me in a way of, and it's just, I sort of just look for connective tissue, I guess. So it's like, I really don't know where to put anything in a sense, especially this crawler thing. But that reminded me in a lot of ways of the alien abduction thing, because people, they would have visitations by the crawler like a couple times else later in their life. But also then, if we're looking at it from a creature perspective, it could just be that this is the natural habitat. Wherever this person saw it is the natural habitat. And so it's just hanging around there.
Yeah. And North America really seems to be the main spot for these things. Like, there are one or maybe a small handful outside of, the U.S. or North America or anything, but it is really mostly in Canada, United States, where you would, and this makes sense if this were a real species, because this would be a population distribution. This lines up with what a range would be, because it's consistent, and animals aren't I'm trying to think of the point I was trying to make.
It's all right, man. Animals, they're mysterious.
Exactly, yeah.
Speaking of animals, we're gonna pivot to another thing I noticed in the book. Was dogs. A lot of times people were walking their dogs. Now that just might be happenstance that happened to be when they ran into the crawler. But there's a part of me that's like, well, maybe there's some kind of maybe that draws the crawler out. Maybe the crawler's like, he's out looking for food, and he detects the presence of a small prey, and then he comes out of wherever the fuck he is. I think they might hang out up in trees.
I think it's totally possible.
Yeah,
they have the body
down onto the crawler.
They have the anatomy for it. It makes sense. And even then, multiple encounters report specifically them eating deer. Which to my knowledge, not even Bigfoot reports talk about, because I know Bigfoot people report Bigfoot encounters as them eating like berries and things like that, but I don't think and it's ever been reported of anyone seeing a Bigfoot eating a deer carcass, but maybe I'm wrong. But it's the same, if this were a real species, we're noticing like a diet consistency where people are reporting, deers. So maybe they're interested in people because they know we have dogs, and maybe they're interested in maybe taking possibly dogs as a food source, but I've yet to have an encounter where, or receive an encounter where anyone's dog has been nabbed by a crawler.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That would be a good one.
That would be a good one.
My heart goes out to the dog, of course, but
Yeah.
that would be quite the story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that part made me wonder if the dogs are drawing out the crawler somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about sounds made by this thing? Because we've got the visual down.
Mm-hmm.
Are there across the board? There are a few cases here. So I guess draw on your memory of what you heard over the years from talking to these witnesses. What do you know of possible sounds made by these things?
Yeah, so we know through several encounters that they'll thump, whatever that means. Whether maybe that's like whether it's them, jumping down from a tree, or maybe it's them doing like a sort of like a intimidation, thing. But more vocally, I recall a lot of actual like monkey type sounds. Sometimes they're like a cackling, or sometimes it's like a not a howling, like a cackling, like a howling cackle is what
Yeah.
sometimes they're reported as having, but also sort of like a chittering, which also sort of ties into maybe a more primate origin for these things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it's unrelated necessarily to the sound, but I was thinking this. I wanted to make this point when we were talking about the possibility that it lives in caves, and that would be if it was a sort of primate creature. Because chimps kind of are. This is kind of like along the lines of a chimp in a way. They do kind of go from. They're actually the few I said earlier. I don't know what you mean. Chimps can kind of do the walk on 2 feet relatively fine, and then go on the 4 and go.
Oh, so definitely.
That might be the closest to a crawler as far as ambulatory ability.
Totally, yeah.
But what I was, in a sense, one might think that if it lived in the cave systems, that might have to be how it gets around in the caves anyway, crouched down.
Right.
And then it gets out and it can kind of like stretch out, or within the cave system, there might be places where it can kind of stretch out. So that would kind of explain how it could go into the two different way of standing, if you will.
Yeah, where it's like the quadrupedal sort of crawling crawler is sort of its like more natural state, or at least more with ease. And they don't really live in an environment where they're upright all the time. So maybe that is an explanation for how, when they're not on all fours, that they have like this awkward sort of movement to them.
Yeah.
So I would think that would check out.
Yeah. Now, does anyone? What about smells? With Bigfoot, everyone talks about the nasty smell that's always associated with it. Do people talk about any smells that they remember when they run into this thing?
Yeah, the only one I can think of, typically not, but there's small exceptions where one eyewitness had reported a sort of blueberry pie smell.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting because there are other animals that have scents. There's an animal called a binturong, which smells like popcorn. And I forget what
primate.
It's more like a cat kind of animal.
All right.
I'm not sure how to describe it. It might be its own thing, but it looks kind of like a big black and gray sort of red panda cat looking thing.
All right.
And they smell like popcorn.
Really?
For reasons I'm not entirely sure.
Weird.
But animals sometimes, I don't know if that would be like a scent sort of marker thing, because with Sasquatch, I don't know if anyone's ever used the Sasquatch pheromone lures.
Yes, I've smelled them.
They're
horrifying.
disgusting.
Yeah.
But I think that is one way we could explain possibly Sasquatch's why they smell so bad, is that it could possibly be maybe a mating scent or something like that, or something out of aggression. A lot of primates have scent glands that will react to high levels of anxiety. Maybe it's a mix of all of these things that maybe gives credence to the crawler maybe having if it doesn't want to maybe charge someone, maybe it has this odd scent deterrent that maybe it emits.
That's possible.
That's the only way I
can explain the blueberry
might
pie.
be able to justify that. But.
Yeah. Well, I'll go sort of more skeptical in a sense, but just a different take on it. Maybe that was just kind of, and I'm not. This is again with all due respect to this guy. Maybe that was some kind of olfactory hallucination in the traumatic experience of encountering this thing. Like, just maybe it was something that was like, okay, like his mind is fucking breaking, and let's bring this. It's some kind of natural psychological mechanism
for
that
comfort
says we got to bring this guy back to reality. We need to center him. Start smelling blueberry pie. Like the body just does that. So
I would totally believe that.
Lose his mind. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially when we have almost every other report being this super, sort of stressful, traumatic, just encounter that freaks these people out and literally makes them break down sometimes, like with Sarah Nielsen.
Yeah. Now I'm looking at the binturong. It's it's also known as the bear cat, and it's
yes.
It says it's a vivarid, which is another word. I can't look that up. We're trying to.
I'm not sure what that is.
A vivarid, native to South and Southeast Asia, and it looks like it looks like a mangy looking. It says it's not closely related to bears or cats. It's carnivorous. It's a very unique animal, so it's it's interesting. The binturong.
That's all I can think of whenever I hear the blueberry pie. I think of, that's just a random food.
Right.
But then it made me think of that. I was like, why do they smell like popcorn?
It's interesting. It's odd. Well, we kind of talked about possible discernible geographic areas. Now, I suppose the book is a prisoner of the time period in a way of when it was written, the internet age. Because I was going to ask, and you would know this because you collected the cases, the time period. Is there any sort of general time period? Are these primarily like in the new millennium, which is crazy to think because we're 23 years into it now, but are they within this new millennium primarily? It seemed that way from reading the book, but I didn't go through chapter and verse and writing it down to do a graph or whatever. So I thought about it, but I'm not that. I can be lazy sometimes. But that did cross my mind. Like, all right, are these like relatively recent within the last 15, 20 years?
Yeah. So I found one. I was able to talk with someone who actually provided a couple amazing, great eyewitness sketches about her husband from, I believe this was 76, which was only a year after the Dover Demon was cited. And this sighting just had gone completely under the radar, I guess. But that was the only other one that was sort of pre-2000s.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other ones literally range from 2001 up until 2022 or 2021. Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's just because maybe people are scared to come forward, or in the more modern era, people can just sort of post their stories to forums, or it's more easily able to be, shared and put out there. But it definitely seems more so to be definitely maybe within the past like 20 years or so. And even crawler was only a word I could find going as far back as like 2018 in origin. So I think people just didn't really have a name to put to these encounters, which is also what I'm. Yeah. No, this is what I'm also trying to do with the book, is that I want people to report their encounters to me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Much like Bigfoot or anything like that. It's I haven't seen a book published of these Dover Demon type encounters, so I totally believe that there's more people who've seen these things that just maybe aren't comfortable or don't feel like they're able to share their encounters. So hopefully with this book being published, we'll be able to get, more people reporting their encounters and things like that.
Yeah, or they may just not even know that anyone's talking about them.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's like I'm sure there are people who will see the book and they're like, kind of like communion. What happened to people who had NFTs? They might see the book and go, holy shit, that's that thing I saw that time I was camping. And then if so, they should get in touch with Nate and tell him their story.
Right. The cover is very actually kind of communion-esque.
It is, for sure. It is it's a really creepy looking thing. And it's not a book unless you like being scared. It's not a book to read like before you go camping.
I was going to say,
or anything like that.
I've had a few people actually tell me that they've read it while they were camping at night, and they said that it was a big mistake.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Let me think of what else. Are there any other trends that I didn't really pick up on maybe in the book? Is there anything that you think's noteworthy as far as where we can kind of tie this all together? Maybe that, like I said, it seemed like they're all nocturnal and
forests.
Forests, and what I like about the book too is there are several instances where it's more than one person who saw the thing. So that's a quality case.
Which also goes back to it's consistent with the Dover Demon sightings.
Right.
And I'm not sure what it is, because people don't typically see like any other cryptid in groups or anything like that. But with the Dover Demon and all the crawler sightings, it's almost pretty consistently either one person seeing it, however many times, or, groups of people seeing them. And I'm not sure why groups of people attract these things so much, seemingly. But maybe it stems back to them being an intelligent entity, whatever you want to call them. And maybe they are just genuinely curious of people. And then maybe if, a person gets too close, they sort of go on edge and, drop down and try and intimidate or run away or whatever.
Right. Now, I think I know the answer to this, although maybe you've heard stories, maybe they didn't make it in the book, or maybe I missed it somewhere in the stuff. I'm certain I didn't. But has anyone shot at these things? Like, because in some stories there are people with guns and shit, but no one. The grandfather, Sarah Nielsen, and the grandfather, I know, I guess because the sighting was so short, but I mean, they were armed when they were all.
Oh, they definitely could have taken that shot.
Yeah.
But not to my knowledge, at least, not one that anyone's reported. But I guess in the same vein as people who research Bigfoot and put out documentaries and stuff, I would love for anyone to see this book and be like, oh, that's like that thing that I have in my freezer that I shot 10 years ago or whatever. So I guess that, that would be maybe
that's why the crawler was looking through Michael Walker's grandfather's shed.
Yeah, maybe exactly.
There was a dead crawler in there. He's like, I'm looking for my cousin.
Save his friend, yeah.
Yeah. Now in the book,
not to my knowledge, no one's ever shot one.
All right. Now in the book, you got this. There's a picture. Oh, I'm sure you. I don't know. You should know that picture.
Yep.
It's in the book.
Yep.
There's a picture here. It says a photograph allegedly captured in 2008 at King's Cliff near North Petherton, Somerset, England, implying the possible crawler encounters outside of North America. And it's a very dark picture. It says enhanced for clarity.
That's an enhanced version.
I know. In the distance, you see the little. It may not translate well to the printing of a book too. You know what I mean? But I'd like to see a digital version of it.
One where it's kind of.
Oh wow!
Better than mine for some reason.
Oh no, yours is fantastic. All right, yeah. So what the hell's the story? Oh yeah, it must just be the book printing I got.
Interesting.
So what's the story with that picture? What is that? Because I mean, anyone reading the book or hearing about things like, well, why doesn't anyone take a picture? So at the end of the book, there's a picture of a possible crawler. What the hell is that all about? What's the story with that? Because the story's not in the book.
The story's not in the book, because that is all the information I could find on this photo.
Okay.
And it was a public domain photo that I had come across just in my research, and then I had also found a couple, and this kind of possibly goes into the idea of future volumes, but I had found a couple encounters from the UK, just Europe, but not anywhere near as much or as many or as detailed as any of the ones, in the first volume from North America or anything like that. So I guess I put that out there just because it's a photo I had never seen before. It fits, the criteria, aside from it being in the UK. And I kind of wanted to put that in as putting my feelers out there for any possible encounters that may exist outside of North America.
Yeah.
To maybe, create a future volume of sightings outside of America.
Right.
So yeah, there was unfortunately not too much information that I could find on that photo.
Okay.
But that's sort of the reason why I included it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's cool, and that's believable because it's not particularly great. I mean, it's a cool, but there's so many fucking pictures. That's another thing. It's like the stories you got to be on guard about these days.
Mm-hmm.
Pictures now even more than ever with this AI stuff.
Absolutely.
It's really tough to discern what's real and what's not. Mm-hmm. Ironically, I suppose this always was the case, but you really have to. It all comes down to the witness. It all comes down to the person who took the picture, because it's
how reliable are they?
Right. Because often I think a lot of these AI pictures, they get flashed around the internet. It's like, I found this in my grandfather's trunk, and it's like, all right, dude, this is bullshit.
Yeah. And there's so many ways you can tell an image is AI generated as well. You can also run them through things that are we'll analyze it and actually be like, this is an AI image that drew from
nice.
this and this, but that's way more advanced than basic like image analysis.
Yeah, and very often if it's too good to be true, it's like just too there was some like I've seen a few lately that are just like, all right, dude, like, come on.
Yeah. There's the one photo in the book of the sort of vague trail cam photo.
Okay, yeah, I think I remember this one. Is this whereabouts in the book? Is it in the middle of the book? Oh wait,
it's in the first chunk near the beginning.
All right.
But they sent that to me. All those enhancements were done by the people who had sent it to me, the couple who sent it to me.
Okay.
And I think it's obviously not clear enough to say, and they didn't see it with their own eyes, but
right.
That would be, one of the very few photos potentially of a crawler that there are.
Yeah, it's very hard to, and it's easy to rip on a witness and go, well, why don't you take a picture? It's like, it happens all the time with these Bigfoot stories. It's like, I think if you run into something like this, even UFO accounts, it seems like the story is always the same, where it's just like, you're having this once in a lifetime experience, and you're so enraptured by what you're seeing is so unbelievable that you don't really think to take a picture of it because it's like you don't want to take your eyes off of it for like a split second. That's the impression I get from people who've seen this stuff.
Especially, I would say that applies even more so to crawler encounters, because with Bigfoot, like we said earlier, they just kind of leave. But with crawlers, they stick around and either, you know, chase you off or stalk you or anything like that. So they don't really take off like Bigfoot do. They stick around.
Yeah, they kind of push you away.
It seems, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you're not gonna like get a camera out and then it runs right at you.
It would be a great video, but
yeah. So I think it is important to note beyond, I suppose, the blueberry pie thing, which is kind of like hard to fit into. That's an outlier.
Yeah.
And so there's a few outliers. You know, there's like one guy who said he saw it like in 3 different states. That's one where it's like, all right, this is an outlier to the book.
Yeah.
But beyond those, it would seem for the most part, what you've said over a lot of the time here tonight is that generally there's no supernatural element to this. It's not really a paranormal element. It's not literally manifesting before someone's eyes or vanishing before their eyes or communicating telepathically or anything like this. All of all the descriptions and its behavior conform to a creature. Correct?
Yep. Yes. There's no one's, at least in my research, has reported a UFO or any craft or anything with it. No clothing or anything that it wears, which is why it leads me to believe that it's maybe an undiscovered mammal. But the
well, what about the possibility that it is? I'm sure the skeptical people, the first thing is mange. That's like the catch-all explanation for sort of like people say bears for Bigfoot.
Right.
This is the crawler is just a bear with mange or some other animal with mange, and it looks freaky because of that. I'm sure you've kind of heard this argument, but it doesn't square with you, I take it.
Yes, and if it's a bear with mange, if you see a bear, if you've ever seen a picture of a hairless bear, they aren't really that skinny.
Right. Yeah. That's
true. The skin is kind of glistening, but it's mostly dry and sort of, I don't know how to describe it. It's loose. Yeah, it's loose fitting skin. Not really what any of the eyewitnesses report with crawlers or anything like that. Nor does any of the behavior really fit in with how an animal would act with mange, because they're skin mites, and no one ever reports any like scarring or any clawing or bite marks or ripped skin or anything like that. I think it's totally possible. I think misidentifications are totally possible. I think I won't say most, but a lot of cryptid encounters I personally do think are misidentifications or could be misidentifications. Right. And I think that could totally be the case. I think it's entirely possible for crawlers. It's very easy, especially when most of the encounters take place during nighttime in areas where there are lots of shadows anyways. I'm totally open to the idea of a number of them being maybe mangy coyote or deer or anything or something like that. Right. But overall, I don't know if the behavior of these things sort of matches up with different animals with mange. Why would a bear with mange act the same as a deer with mange or a fox or anything like that? Because these are all different animals and different niches in their ecology and everything like that. So it wouldn't really make sense why what we're seeing with crawlers, why the activities and how they, react to humans and things like that are so consistent, and why some of them are just so detailed in the descriptions and things like that. I feel like people would be able to see, a bear's ears or anything like that, or a snout, which no one ever reports in crawler sightings.
Yeah.
No one reports like a nose or anything that you would see on like a bear or a dog or anything like that. It's always either flat or just like two holes. So
Yeah.
I it's totally possible. Just like with Bigfoot, I'm sure there are absolutely misidentifications.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just checked. Yeah, there's 35 cases in the book. So it's like, even if like a third of them are made up, right? Let's say a third of the people just made them up online. Then a third of them are misidentifications. You're still left with like 10 instances of people seeing these creatures. So
detailed, pretty solid instances as well. So
exactly, exactly. It's,
well, and even
that's the compelling part about the whole. You take the totality. You hear the one story, you're like, well, this could. But then we have 35 of them. It's like, well, look. I mean, are they all wrong or fake? Like, there's no way that, like, to me at least, it's like there's got to be something here going on.
Yeah, exactly.
With this phenomenon.
Well, and that's why I included sort of like the more supernatural encounters as well that maybe seem out of place, but with this, since it's to my knowledge, the first book on this sort of phenomena, I didn't want to cherry pick information. I wanted to just have a collective sort of basis, and then we can, sort of weed out what, maybe doesn't fit or what is inconsistent.
Yeah.
So we can actually build, a database for these sightings and things like that, so we can know what is more consistent and further research and all that.
Right, exactly. Have a template, if you will. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, is there a website for this? Is there like a website for the book? I mean, I would recommend, like, look, Nate, if first of all, you gotta do more shows.
I know.
Get out and promote this book. Because it's really fascinating and it's really interesting, and it's a whole. As I bumped it when it first came out over the summer on my social media, because it's like this is new stuff. This is a new creature possibly, which is exciting. It's not a rehash of stuff. So I mean, and you're going to be, as the book gets more heard of, you're going to become the crawler guy. So I would say you got to set up like a website and have a way for people to contact you. And like share their sightings, because as this goes on more and more, like look at what happened with, God rest her soul, the late great Linda Godfrey. I mean,
absolutely.
She wrote Beast of Bray Road, and then next thing you know, she was the dog man aficionado, the expert, and she got cases all the time. So I'm hoping, I mean, hopefully I'm not bestowing a curse upon you, but I'm hoping that you can become the crawler guy and you can get more crawler stories, and this can really flourish as a whole new thing in the world of cryptozoology, or right on the cusp. We don't know what it is really. I mean, like I said, I still kind of entertain the possibility that it might be supernatural in nature, even though
definitely,
it doesn't show any supernatural characteristics per se.
Right. Yeah.
So no website.
I'm trying to not trying to pick what I'm reveal. Pick what I'm going to reveal very, very carefully. But I did mention a possible second volume of the book.
Oh, okay.
And I'm.
Uh-oh. We lost Nate. This never would have happened if we used the fucking landline, folks. But no, get on a StreamYard. There he is. There you go. No worries, man.
All right.
You're perfectly good. I may leave that in because I was just complaining about how this never would have happened if we hadn't got off the fucking telephone. y'all wanted me to do it on StreamYard and do it with a microphone.
There it goes.
So here we go. All right. So yeah, you don't want to. There may be something in the pipeline. Well, that's the final question, really, is the what's next for you.
Mm-hmm.
If it helps at all, I mean, ballpark, I'd say this is probably going to be coming out in like early December. So if you think that if you have something in the, that you want that you feel comfortable plugging there, that's fine. But whatever. So all right, we got Nate back. There he is. So you got something cooking, but you don't necessarily want to spill the beans just yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much different from what we've talked about, but I'm trying to work on sort of a central hub for sort of like a branch off from my association of cryptozoology that maybe would be able to just tackle crawler sightings. And that would be I'm planning on working on a report solely just for crawler encounters that people can fill out, just to have its own separate database from like, all the Bigfoot and Thunderbird reports we get. So that would be something to look forward to in the future, amongst other
definitely
related topics. I will be selling autographed copies at Parafest, Maine, in Vassalboro, in October.
All right, people are gonna when in October?
October 26th.
Okay, so you did sign books at the Parafest. How was it? Was it great? No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, no, I don't. We probably aren't going to get this one out by then. So
yeah, that's fine.
Anything else in 2024?
Not currently. Mostly still just a lot of planning for stuff and getting more stuff.
There you go.
Refining the first edition.
And what is the name? Do you have any? Give us the name of the Facebook group again. And is it any? That's your main hub, right? That's what you want to say.
Yeah, so that'll be the Association of Cryptozoological Fieldwork and Analysis, or ACFA Cryptozoology. And I also have my just sort of general production films, filmmaking sort of page, which is Bizarre Base, and that's in partnership with Rural Chaos TV Productions.
Nice.
So that's sort of the three of those are sort of what I jump in between whenever I have updates on any of my projects or anything like that.
Awesome. Sounds good. And obviously people can go to Amazon, get the book.
Yep.
What about Pine State Phantoms and Eyes from the Pines, the Pine Ape Project? Where can they watch those?
Yeah, so you can get those at Rural Chaos Productions, ruralchaos.tv. They're available on the website. You can get a digital or physical DVD, whatever you would prefer.
All right.
And then through Bizarre Base as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. I think that just about covers it, brother. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I think the first time I met Nate was at the International Cryptozoology Conference. You were on the youth panel, right?
Was I? Because I think that was.
I think you may have been. It was at the Clarion before they moved it to the warehouse.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
What was that?
That was great. That was a long time ago now. Probably 7 or 8 years ago. And so, yeah, and all the folks on the panel, it was great because it was like, all right, the future's in good hands, and now it's kind of like coming to fruition, and we can see that here with Nate and the book Crawlers. So it's been awesome to watch you rise up here in the field, and I'm really impressed, man. And I'll be honest, I kind of don't impress easy because I'm kind of a cynic after all these years. So when you came up with this thing, with this whole new thing, with this whole new creature or whatever, I'm like, shit, this is kind of Linda Godfrey like. This is very groundbreaking stuff. So hats off to you, man. Kudos to you, and you should be really proud of yourself. You're doing some really great work.
Thank you very much. That means a lot coming from you as well.
Oh, man, my pleasure. Well, thank you for the great conversation, man. And I'm sure you're only up in Maine, so our paths will cross.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely.
All right, man. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.